My name's Jules Jackson, and 20 years ago, in the year 2000, I founded the Native American Students Association at Villanova University, which occupies Lenni Lenape land. I'm Nanticoke, and the Lenni Lenape are our linguistic cousins. Our land, traditions, and lineage are shared. Growing up every new school year, I would be so excited to finally learn about my people and nation. And at the end of every school year, inevitably, I would leave disappointed. So I thought when I had finally worked hard enough to earn a scholarship to attend college, surely this would be where I would learn about the socioeconomic contributions of my nation and our land and water rights. When this still didn't happen, I realized I had to take matters into my own hands. So I created NASA, the Native American Students Association. I started NASA in order to raise awareness about the Indigenous experience, both in and outside of Villanova, as well as to establish Indigenous staff, faculty, and curriculum. As a cultural organization, we stood with the other Villanova cultural organizations and protested Donald Trump's false Islamophobic statements after September 11th. We blocked the section of campus surrounding the Oreo, which was then located in front of Connolly Center. Robin Hoos of the then Multicultural Affairs office, she was always so loving and so supportive, wrote articles about the Indigenous experience. And we tried and really were unable to get any movement or even actual support from the university. I brought in guest lecturers to Villanova to increase awareness, and with the help of the former Bartley Print Center director, Bonnie Lyons, we brought Indigenous dancers to the university to perform as well. I literally handed the Indigenous experience to Villanova on a silver platter, and they basically full out rejected it. Since none of those efforts were successful, I attempted to gain broader dialogue and served as a SGA diversity chairperson on the school's first ever Diversity and Inclusiveness Committee, reporting directly to the vice president. You have to think, back in 2000, Villanova was still not celebrating the federally recognized Dr. King holiday, despite having Dr. King speak at Villanova in the 1960s. When Dr. Nance brought up celebrating the federally recognized holiday, she received virtually no support. I was shocked. It was the first time I saw how insidious racism was at the academic level. I told the committee I would refuse to leave the room until they celebrated the day. I was threatened with the taking away of reading days, which are the days in between the last days of classes and exams, and I refused to cave. This was how the eventual week-long celebration of the Dr. King Freedom School started. As I was back when I was in undergrad, I've remained committed to ending racist mascots, and I've been lucky enough to return to Villanova to lecture on the topic. When I approached Villanova, however, about starting an Indigenous curriculum, Indigenous department, I was told there's just not support for that. 15 years later, after I started NASA, and it looked like nothing had changed. Last fall, in 2019, I returned to what was supposed to be the Diversity Summit and found out the word diversity was actually taken out of the summit. I guess it made some people a little too uncomfy. When I attended Dr. Nance's incredible lecture, I saw the same Indigenous statistics. Basically, no Indigenous students, no Indigenous staff, no Indigenous faculty, and no Indigenous curriculum. Questions I would ask all Villanovans would be, how many Indigenous nations can you name? What about Indigenous authors? When you go in the Villanova bookstore, how many books do you see that have an Indigenous perspective? I think that that's a good start. You know, moving forward, I'm honestly really hopeful. The last several months in this country have really encouraged an awakening in all things race-related, including Indigenous inclusion. So for Villanova, I would say that they need to have some goals in mind moving ahead in 2021, the first of which would be an official land acknowledgement from the university. You know, Villanova sits on Lenni Lenape land, and that needs to be recognized, and it's long overdue. They need to establish goals for hiring Indigenous staff and faculty. They need to have support systems in place for incoming Indigenous students. They need to have curriculum and departments established that have Indigenous authors. There are a lot of great steps that Villanova can take to rectify what they've done so far in terms of not having Indigenous representation, and I'm stoked to help in any way move that dial forward.